Hello, everybody. Uh, Thanks for joining us. My name is Jonathan Dover, and I'm here with Michelle Miners. And we're going to be talking today about sacred places and how they kind of bridge the gap. There are many sacred places all over the world, and we're going to get into that in just a few minutes here. Michelle, what's new with you?
Well, it's been an interesting week. I had the opportunity to go do some camping up in the Uinta Basin. We had some really interesting things happen while we were there. But I, again, I think I told you, John, that I had gone up there as a vacation and not an investigation. And anytime I'm up in that basin, things are always manifesting. So that was what happened this last weekend. That's what's happening.
Yeah, wanting you to do some overtime work, huh?
Yeah, and I just went with it. It was quite fun. It was quite fun. It was actually peaceful, to be honest. A reprieve. I needed the rest.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you got a little bit of rest. For me, I just got back from the Snippy conference up in Alamosa, Colorado. Mm-hmm. And I went up there with Stan, and Stan is traveling right now. He should be in Oklahoma, and he's visiting family. He's got his sister and his nephew with him, and so he's going to be quite busy, probably putting on some pounds. If those of you from the Midwest know how Oklahoma is, everywhere you go, every family wants you that you visit wants you to eat something. And the trick I found out was just to eat a little bit, because by the end of the day, everybody's going to feed you, and you're going to be all roly-poly by the end of the day. So I wish him luck.
In the Indian way, right? Don't leave us hungry.
Definitely the native way, only they'll serve you pork chops and biscuits and gravy and just all kinds of, heavy foods. And, and it's not polite to say no.
That's right.
And soda pop with everything. So,
the sugar intake as well.
Yeah, got to have that sugar.
Well, John, it's an interesting subject matter. We're going to talk about sacred places where the paranormal world can manifest. I did tell you a little bit about me being at Uinta Basin and how it manifests. And if we're open to that, things will just show up. And apparently, as paranormal rangers, we are being manifested to all the time. Would you like to share a story or anything like that, or?
Would I like to share a story? Oh boy. Yeah, there are many sacred places. We really don't know if ley lines have something to do with it, but there are, it would appear, nodes of energy. Mm-hmm. Sedona is a good example of an area that has a lot of paranormal things that happen. And, along with Stonehenge and the pyramids and, just all over, everywhere around the world, different places, Machu Picchu. And in the case of Sedona, there's UFOs that are allegedly seen. There are vortexes that are there. And I can tell you from personal experience, I've known of people that go in there and they'll be hiking a trail, and suddenly they'll get dizzy and literally have to sit down on the trail, or in one case even just lost consciousness and had a headache the rest of the day. So, now I believe they wear orgonite or something like that to help counteract those frequencies and energies that are there. so it doesn't affect them as much. And I know some of them that won't even go back there anymore. But there are areas like that that have that kind of energy. And of course, Skinwalker Ranch is another one. I was recently up there, and that area is just full of different things going on all the time, it would seem. And sometimes it's quiet, other times it's very active. And there's no way to tell from day to day what you're going to get and what's going to present itself to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, here's what an interesting thing happened. I traveled up to Colorado, Boulder, and did a taping with George Norrie, and for the Gaia television show that will air probably in about a couple of months. I was checking into my hotel, and that hotel's been around for quite a time, and it was a beautiful hotel. It was a 4-star. They do everything to the nines. What was really interesting is my key wouldn't work in my room the second time around, and I went down and exchanged some keys, and when I came back up, I was swiping my key to see if it worked, and it didn't. And all of a sudden somebody was standing next to me and says, "Oh, do you want to get in here? I can let you in." And I was like looking at him going, "How did you get here so quickly?" And I looked at his name tag. There was no name on his name tag. He was dressed like he was security. He had a fob on him. And he says, "But I need to know your name, and I need to see if are you with somebody in the room?" And I looked at him and I said, "They already have all my credentials, otherwise I wouldn't be able to get my key." And he acted a little bit stumped about what I just said, because I did not reveal my name. And he went to attempt to knock on the door. I said, like I said, "I'm here taping a show." I had mentioned that to him in the process. He then said, "Well, I guess you're going to have to go get another set of keys." And in this mind, I had formulated that my battery in the key door was out or something happened. But it was really interesting because he turned, and I kind of looked out at the side of my right side to see if he was going to walk down the hall. He had disappeared.
Okay.
And I was left with this really interesting feeling, like you talked about the vortex, the swirling.
The disorientation.
Yeah, I felt that right after, and I thought, okay, I'm going to do a little bit of investigation. So I went downstairs. The head housekeeping was there, and so they gave me another set of keys, and then they sent a couple of guys to come up and change the battery, which they did. And I shared that story. I go, who's on your security? He goes, "The security doesn't come in till tonight." And I said, "Who's the head of housekeeping?" And he goes, "Well, we have an Asian guy who's currently up here." And I said, "Yeah, I met him because I had help with my refrigerator. There was a locked refrigerator." And then he says, I go, "Do you have a young guy who is on housekeeping or on security?" He goes, "Like I said, we don't have anybody on security. You may want to talk to the front desk." So I let it lie for about a day. And I thought I did some more investigating, and I went down the next day and I talked to the head manager at the front desk, and I said, "Hey, when does I'm going to repeat the questions I had done to maintenance." And I said, who was on your security last night? And they said, we don't disclose that, ma'am. And I said, "Do you have a guy and he's young?" And he goes, "No, our gentleman is a little bit older." And they don't come in until later in the evening. And I said, "Well, who is head of housekeeping?" And then they said it was an Asian gentleman. And I said, "Do you have a young guy that works housekeeping?" I go, "He was dressed in the uniform and everything." They go, "No, ma'am, we don't have him." And he looks at me, he goes, "You had a paranormal moment, didn't you?" He goes,
Yeah.
can you write that on the Yelp? And I said, no, sir. I said, then you'll have no patrons coming to check into your hotel. So he says, that's a story to be told. So that's what happened. And sometimes our sacred places are places that we stay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Stan and I were in 2014, were invited to the very first paranormal conference in Stirling, Scotland.
Yeah.
And so we got to go over there. We spent about a week. We spoke at Stirling for the Stirling Paranormal Festival. Then we spoke at Loch Lomond for the Park Service. And then we spoke at Glasgow. And when we were at Stirling, we stayed in I would say it's probably 1820 or 1830s house that was set up as a bed and breakfast. So it had lots of rooms in there, and you could tell it was really, really old. But they had refurbished it and everything else. And so, we're in this very, very old building. And there was a whole street full of them that were all these bed and breakfast places. And so we were shown our room. They gave us a little bitty room with a bathroom. And all I remember is the showers were so small, you had to squeeze in there, and you could barely move around to shower. But the floor was heated in there, and on a cold day, you just wanted to go in the bathroom and lay on the floor.
That's great.
The beds were really narrow, almost like being in a boarding school bed. Just this really, really narrow bed. And Stan had his on one side, and I had mine. He was over near the door, and I was near the window. And so we get back from a long day of walking around the whole town there and taking it all in. And the lights are out, and Stan, that boy can sleep. I'll tell you what. And he's over there laying down. It's dark in the room. You can barely see things, just dark things in the room. And as we're laying there, what I see is a shadow that stands up from the foot of his bed and walks toward the head of the bed, on the door side, and went through the wall. And it's a human figure. And so I'm just kind of taking it in, dark shadow on a dark background. And then I hear Stan say, "John, are you still awake?" And I says, "Yeah." And he says, "Something just sat down on the corner of the bed at the bottom, and the whole corner of the bed went down." And then he says, and then it got up again, and the bed went back up. And I says, "Yeah, I saw it get up from the bottom corner of your bed and go toward the head and walk right through the wall." And so the next morning we were having our what did they call it? Our eggs and bangers, and which is what they call sausages over there, and our hand pressed coffee. And as we were having breakfast, we asked the lady that's running the breakfast place about that thing, and she goes, "Oh yeah." She says, we have, a couple of ghosts around here, and they show up every now and then. And it was just like really nonchalant. It was like, "Oh yeah, no big deal. They're always around here." And so we were just like, wow. So that's what we saw. And, that we just kind of let it go on, and we didn't see anything else while we were there. But that was a really interesting time that we had.
It's really interesting. That experience that you guys have, most people identify as an apparition, but to have somebody in flesh form coming from maybe another dimension is really interesting. Standing in there, but a little confused, and he could have been a different timeline. I mean, I'm just assuming here, and but but getting all the facts of my experience in that hotel was a little bit unnerving, because I could literally probably have touched him, and when he went to attempt to knock on the door, he stopped himself, which was really interesting too, to note. He went like that, and then he pulled back. And so to have somebody in a flesh person like myself and you was a little unnerving. And it's crazy. People have these experiences, and sometimes they don't know what they're dealing with. There's somebody I'm going to be talking to tomorrow that has these consistent things happening in their home, which is their safe place, sacred place, and they don't know how to deal with it. And I told them I can assist them in that process. The thing we need to remember is what's the intent of our hearts? Ask questions. Why are these things happening, first of all? And we all have experiences that, paranormal. We may have met people on the street that may have assisted us in our life. Sometimes I think there are serendipitous moments that we need those assistants to whatever the dangers, or maybe a positive situation that comes out of it.
Yeah, the one thing that occurred to me in the case of hauntings, a lot of times the energy that's there when people pass, that energy goes somewhere.
Yeah.
We know already that energy cannot be destroyed. And it's there. And it can change state, but it can't be destroyed.
That's
so right. A lot of times what we think, based on what we've seen, is that when people die, especially in violent situations or traumatic situations, those energies attach to inanimate objects, or they attach to geologic features, stone and masonry and that kind of stuff, and they stay there. So, when we're in Window Rock is the capital of the Navajo Nation. It's right on the border of New Mexico and Arizona, and that whole area, from Fort Defiance all the way down to Say Benito, was when this cavalry came out and rounded up Navajos, just like they're rounding up people today. Only then it was a very, very brutal time. And if people were trying to escape, they were shot. And they were placed on the long walk, where they were marching hundreds of miles across the desert landscape, through Santa Fe and through other towns, put on display, and then marched to Bosque Redondo, where they were interred for 4 years. Now, what happened is that a lot of Navajos were killed out of hand. If they couldn't keep up, they were shot, they were bayoneted. And a lot of people that lost their lives there, those energies are still attached to that place. We've had incidences of tall 6'3", 6'4" people that look like soldiers, having beards and dressed in uniforms, showing up as specters or ghosts and scaring people. We had one building where the housekeeping was cleaning up after hours. And they said a woman in a long white dress was standing on the second floor by the railing and by the stairs. And as they watched her, she put her arms, out at her sides and turned backwards toward the railing and fell through the railing.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the housekeepers, a woman, she screamed and, ran to find her partner. He came running out, and she explained to her what happened, that a woman had committed suicide and threw herself from the second floor down to the first floor. And they ran over there to look, and there was no body. There was nobody there.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, they refused to work at night. So the housekeeping would come in during the afternoon, but they would not work there at night anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of stuff happens on a pretty regular basis.
John, I had the opportunity 5 years ago to go to Stonehenge. It was a blustery day there, and it was raining like cats and dogs, and the wind was just blowing, unnerving. But I so wanted to be there. So I attempted to go to the monument, and there is definitely a sacred energy there. And I was fascinated by the Druids and how their homes were. They were thick walls. Obviously, that's a place of ceremony. When things occur in a ceremonial aspect, or there's a collective community energy, that stays too. And I was really glad to have that opportunity. I like to travel the world. I seem to go to these archaeological sites around the world. This year, I was in Tikal, the Mayan, Aztec and the monument there, the temples. Same thing, the energy's there. I ran into an archaeologist that was there. They were uncovering one of the temples, and he told me in some knowledge that they were uncovering something very special, but he couldn't give me as to what it was. But in spirit, I felt who it was. It was some type of royalty that they were their body, and he identified with me because I shared with him some spiritual things. So one of the things he says when they go in, he said there is a spiritual thing that they do before they attempt to unravel the archaeological aspect. And very intelligent man. And he said it's important to the culture, and they still practice those safety measures and ceremonies out of respect for the dead and the paranormal. And he was so fascinated, but he had a doctorate degree in archaeology. It was quite interesting to speak with him. And some of the community, the young folk, it's one lady, she goes, I always have paranormal moments. And even paranormal healing, she gave us a spice or root. She said, this will help you cure yourself, and it helped cure one of my relatives' cancer, So that's a medicine. And she said, but it also bring you closer to the spirit world, meaning that you'll see something possibly in aiding you through the sickness process. So there is a strong sacred resemblance to similar the indigenous people that we belong to and around the world have some of the same manifestations.
Yeah, and it seems like it is strong sometimes. A comment was made about the scientific community and how they don't want to see any of the spiritual side. That's all kind of hocus pocus stuff. They want facts. They want only scientific evidence. And yet we live in two different worlds. For Native Americans, we live in a spiritual world that we grew up in, and we live in a scientific world that we studied in. And yet there has to be a meeting place between the two because they're interrelated. You know, for me, in my background, my ancestor was white antelope, and along with medicine sit down, matches woman, ghost, you know, so, some of the other Cheyenne and Arapaho that were at Sand Creek, and white antelope was killed there under an American flag and a white flag, which the governor of Colorado had told them to fly over their camp when they were attacked. So white antelope was one of the principal peace chiefs. He had met, him and Black Kettle had met with the president of the United States. They both received those big giant peace medals that they wore. And, you know, he was killed there. So he was also one of the leaders of the Dog Soldiers, which are a Cheyenne warrior society and considered the toughest of all the warrior societies. On the other side, on my Cheyenne side, my mother's father, who I'm named after, his name was Jonathan Redbird. He was supposed to be the arrow keeper. In the Cheyenne tribe, there's two sacred objects. There are the sacred arrows and there's the sacred medicine hat. The medicine hat was kind of like a buffalo headdress with horns on it. And the arrows were 4 sacred arrows. 2 of them were hunting arrows, 2 of them were war arrows. And if these were carried into battle, the Cheyenne never lost. But if one of them was left behind and not brought into the battle, the Cheyennes would lose that battle. And he didn't want to be the arrow keeper because you have to understand being an arrow keeper is kind of like being a priest. You're not allowed to go anywhere. You can't even go to the store. Everybody brings you food. There's a teepee in the back. You care for those arrows 24/7. When they need to be renewed, they come, they bring offerings, they bring, you know, whatever, the materials, and the arrows are rebuilt again. So, you know, this is like a high priesthood position. And he didn't want that. He wanted to travel. He wanted to do other things. So he gave it up and gave it to somebody else. Now, we do know that he had a medicine bundle. So we know that he was well steeped in the traditions of possibly being a medicine man for the tribe. And because my mom remembers there was one room in the house that none of the kids were allowed to enter because a medicine bundle was kept in that room. And so that was just how it was. You didn't go in there. And I know of places like that today where there are rooms that contain sacred objects where nobody is allowed to go in there except the people that handle that material. So there is a background in my family, along with my grandfather, who was trained to be a medicine man from a very early age on the Navajo side. And he grew up in that from a very early age, learning everything there was to know about being a medicine man. And in his mid-20s, he became a Christian. So his testimony was that I used to be a medicine man, but I'm a Christian now. And later on, he became a Christian Reformed minister and stayed in the ministry most of the rest of his life. So there is definite spiritual side to much of this that really gets overlooked.
I like this question here about the ley lines. Let's go back to that he was asking that should be should be investigated a little bit more. So I'm going to talk about Dr. Segala just for a few minutes. Dr. Segala and I did a work up in the Uinta Basin where we studied those ley lines, and we used to think it was the environment that introduced itself to us, that it was manifesting the environment. But generally what we found out, it was us in the environment that it would reveal, whether it's sacred, whether things. So Dr. Segala and I had an experience when we were conducting our experiment there with electromagnetic fields. And what we discovered was anytime we got in an environment where something was going to happen, it became remotely quiet, nothing. You couldn't hear the birds, nature, nothing, traffic, anything. And I felt like I was in a bubble. And I know that on some shows right now, they talk about the bubble. And that's what I felt like we were in. And sometimes that's when things manifest itself, is when you're in the bubble. And it is somewhat, I wouldn't say unnerving, but it's quite different, because you're like nature, everything shuts down. And so a little bit of that 37 parallel where the ley lines intersect is the most active parallel in the earth. And a lot of people like to study the 37th parallel lines of ley lines. So that would be an interesting experience, an investigation and experiment to conduct on this 37th parallel, where so much happens. Is it energy running in and out? I don't know.
That's I think that's known as the alien highway.
Yeah, it is. It is. What do you know about that?
Well, the alien highway basically from coast to coast has a huge number of paranormal things that happen along it, including UFOs and hauntings, just everything. And they've actually tracked it and identified things around it. And when you look at the pictures, you just see these massive dots that show up all along that corridor. And, even as far as back east. And one of the things I did want to mention is sometimes we want to be careful about manifesting things. We get out there and I always, coming back from a conference, I ran into some people that would literally give their arm if they could have some kind of a paranormal experience. And I've had so many of them that I don't care if I have any more. It's just for a while there, it was really, really a lot of stuff going on when we were doing these investigations for about 11 years. And we were seeing UFOs just when we're traveling. I had one that actually dive bombed the car as I was on my way to Los Angeles, just outside of Ash Fork. And it was this red and blue light that were steady, that were round right next to each other. And it came down over the highway. And the 18-wheeler, about, less than a quarter, maybe 200 yards in front, swerved because they thought this thing was going to hit them. And it went over us, and then we watched it as it banked and went down toward Prescott. And, we were joking about it, saying, well, I guess they know we're going somewhere, so they just wanted to check on us. But one of the things that I do, even now, is like if I go on to Skinwalker Ranch, I'll smoke myself, I'll say my prayers, and ask for protection. And every time I've been there, I felt, and even the last time, I felt literally like there was a invisible bubble around me, and nothing could hurt me. It was just really weird. It was a feeling that there was actually a barrier around me, like a bubble, and there was all kinds of activity, but none of it approached me. So I'm happy that it works, and I'm going to continue with that because I don't need the excitement.
Well, it's a protection. It's a prayer that's been honored in your name and your intent, and you manifested that. And there's so much activity. There was a gentleman that I had been on a episode with the Travel Weather Channel and the Travel Channel, and he likes to consider him not as a medicine man, but as a medicine practitioner. They're interchangeable. And he says, I'm going to show you the path. He's Ute. And he says, I'm going to show you the path of the skinwalker that runs through. And he was jokingly telling me, you Navajos gave us that curse. And it runs right through his property. And so, I said, okay. And we had dinner, a partner of mine and I went to dinner, and it was lovely. We had elk steak. And so he says, come out with me. And he goes, this path runs through my property. So he took us, and he had an accessible road that he could go down on the backside of his property and leading out to the highway. And all of a sudden I see this figure in the middle of the road, and I noticed that I started, my balance was off, and I started to tilt like I was going to fall over. And he recognized that, and he grabbed me. And he says, in the house now. And I had an encounter with our good friend, SW. And he immediately did his cleansing and saging and had me take some medicine from his tribe. And I was swirling. Again, that shows up again, the swirling. And I felt very unbalanced. So he was saying that basically, he said, I probably called that one in because I told you to come to my property. And, he had good humor about it. But I remember feeling kind of sick afterwards.
And just so everybody knows out there, there are shapeshifters up around Skinwalker Ranch. And in my personal estimation of what I've seen in that area and what I've seen worldwide, there are shapeshifters all over the world. They're in Australia, they're in Africa, New Zealand, the Orient. They're everywhere, and even Europe, and so many tribes have versions of a shapeshifter. Now, my personal historical inquiries have found that the Utes provided scouts for the military during the Kit Carson campaign to round up the Navajos. And so at that point, they had been traditional enemies for a long, long time. And so the romantic story is that when the Navajos were released after signing the treaty at Bosque Redondo and allowed to go back to their lands, the Navajos supposedly got together and caused skinwalkers to appear on Ute land. And so it sounds very romantic, a revenge type story. But what I found out is that there are sacred sites located around Skinwalker Ranch. And these sites are set up almost like in the perimeter of that depression. And they were set up 700 to 900 years ago by the Fremont, and continually utilized even by the Utes. So there was something that they were having ceremonies to keep some sort of being or evils away from their tribal lands. And they recognized that area as something that was causing a lot of this unease in the area. So and then I also found out that when the Navajos came back, and I've said this before, there was a separate faction of Navajos that wanted to war with the United States. Kind of like last time we weren't prepared, this time we're going to get ready and we're going to war with you. And Manuelito and some of the other chiefs at the time that were there, like Ganado Mucho, didn't want that to happen. And so they said that over 9 years, they rounded up what they called skinwalkers and executed them from 1868, for 9 years after that. So what we really are starting to think now is that was a political faction that wanted to war with the United States, and they wanted to put that faction down. So what better way than to say a Navajo witch and kill them outright and use that as justification to get rid of that other faction. And they said over 40 were killed during those 9 years. So if you put yourself back in that time, there was a lot of stuff, a lot of political stuff going on, and a lot of Navajos that didn't hold to what was signed off in the treaty. So historically, we have an answer. And I think that, we have other skinwalkers over here from Apache tribes, from other tribes, in Arizona, and that are well known. So we think that these are homegrown artifacts that are inhabiting that area. And I have told everybody as much about that. So,
yeah, John, when you come to Skinwalker to shoot an episode, there is a presence, and this last time Art was with you, and there was a presence that was felt, a peace that had come over, not just over the ranch, but over the entire area of the Uinta Basin. And we felt it. There was some confusion the couple of days before when I got there, and the day after, there was some discomfort, and the energy was negative. And when you guys appeared on that episode and came off the ranch, whatever the prayer or the clearing that you did, it was felt. And I even got texts from friends. Why does it feel so peaceful today? And it was felt. And so it's like we create that feeling and manifestation, because we're talking here about how these sacred places are where we manifest, whether it's our medicine, whether it's who we are, because that's one of the things Dr. Segala and I discovered is we can actually manifest having something visit with us. And it's the person. And there are many sacred places up in the Uinta Basin. That was one of the wonderful things that I and some personal friends, they shared some very, very powerful stories about the sacredness of the area. And so it still continues in our modern day. And we have to remember that each of us has a power within us to manifest, whether negative or positive.
Yeah, and the thing about manifesting stuff, I was a law enforcement officer for 31 years.
Mm-hmm.
4 of those years, I worked in the city of Winslow, Arizona Police. And I ended up as a sergeant over there in charge of a graveyard shift.
Mm-hmm.
And during that time, I can tell you that when it came to the full moon, you did not talk about it at all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No officer would mention, oh, there's a full moon tonight, time for the crazies to come out. You didn't say a thing. And as long as you were quiet about it, the night went on and it was just a normal night. But if somebody came in and started speaking about it, this is why this is where the term lunatic comes from.
Yeah.
And things would go crazy and all kinds of stuff would break loose. Some of the craziest stuff you can imagine. And just strange, weird things were going on, or violent stuff. Mm-hmm. And later on, I found out that there is a reason for it. As you know, there are negative ion generators that make it feel just like you feel after a lightning storm, because negative ions are good for you. Now, on the other hand, positive ions are bad for you. They give you what they call the hyperserotonin effect, which is kind of like getting a cold. Your nose starts running, you start getting migraines or headaches, your sinuses get stuffy, and it can get pretty bad to the point where you're nauseated and ready to throw up. And when I worked for a medical manufacturing company, we had ion fans that would push both negative and positive ions, alternating, so that whatever you were working with didn't develop any static electricity.
Right.
And as you're working there, some of the associates would take this little ion fan. And these little bitty ion fans, only about 8 inches tall and about 5 inches wide and 4 inches deep, they were blowing constantly. And they would use them as personal fans and direct them toward their face. And I would hear of people saying, I've got a headache, I need to leave the room, I don't feel well. Or I'm getting sick. I can feel it. I'm getting sick. My throat's sore, and I got all these symptoms. And it was the positive ions. And if you ever look it up online, just look up the negative effects of positive ions. And you'll find all kinds of papers done by different colleges on this subject and what the effects are. And I would tell people, don't put that fan in your face. And that won't happen to you.
John, you speak about the lunatic. So the eclipse is something similar. Navajos do not come out of their homes during eclipse. And let me share a story. I was here at the house and I was working in the yard, and my family was getting excited. And of course, somebody was handing out glasses. And sometimes in my mind, I think you forget some of the traditions. And I was out in my front yard, and we had just landscaped it with some trees. And all of a sudden, I'm seeing this shadow coming over the trees. And my husband goes, "You better put on your glasses." So I did, and I went through to the experience. But what I experienced, being as sensitive as I am, I started to feel like I had the same effect that I had out there at Skinwalker Ranch. I was feeling electromagnetic swirling, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I fell off balance. And now I understand why we as a culture do not, they understand these effects that could have on the body. So manifestation can come from nature itself.
Right. And before a storm hits, you'll have an increase in positive ions. During the lunar cycle, when you have a full moon, the positive ions are much, much higher. And so now we have cause and effect. And, so we need to understand this about our bodies and how our environment works with those, either with us or against us, and know those times. And there was a good reason for Navajos to say, stay inside and let the eclipse happen.
Well, the effects of electromagnetic fields, we scientifically understand it today. Back in those times of our ancestors, they just knew that it would make them sick. It had a power to it. It had some kind of ill effect towards their experience. And so they took it as a sacred, which it is. It's a sacred moment. And so we stay in our sacred places at all times. John, we have just a few more minutes. I'd like to say and close this session and the episode.
Oh man. Time flew by.
It just was. It did. And we have so many more stories that has to do with our world of manifestation and the sacred places that we've been.
And
one of them has been your land out there.
Oh yeah. Everybody remember that there is a spiritual side to much of this. And we need to get in touch with that spiritual side in every one of us, because it can guide you to a good path and really help you along. And you may tap into abilities that you never knew you had.
And, it's really powerful when you follow spirit, because it can guide you and protect you at the same time. And maybe next time we can talk about the unseen, unforeseen world. The story I'm going to leave you with, just kind of as a teaser, is I had something invisible walk across my legs at one time at a hotel in the Uinta Basin. And that's my teaser. So for the next time.
Yeah, it's like I said, and remember, if you're smudging, the key element in any prayer work that you're doing is to have intent. That what you're praying about, what you're asking for, will manifest. Without the intent, you're just going through the motions. So be aware of that in your prayer.
Absolutely. And our prayers to Stan as he's out there enjoying his family, and he's in his traditional culture too, with his family in Oklahoma. And I love the fact that he is able to get out there and enjoy the food and everything else he's going to have fun with. So intent.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. And we're looking forward to seeing you again soon.
Bye-bye.